Hello and welcome to the Mastering the Hustle podcast. I'm your host, Joel Calkins, and today I'm here with Dan Giuliani, who is the CEO and co-founder of Volt Athletics. Dan, thank you so much for being here. Would you mind just taking a minute and tell us a little bit more about who you are and a little bit more about your company?
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for having me, Joel. It's great to get an opportunity to chat with you, and I'm happy to tell the Volt story as it happened. Yeah, I've been working on this startup journey for about 10 years. My background is actually in the domain, so we are a strength and conditioning, sport performance, human performance technology company, and that was my background. So I was working in high schools and colleges and in the private sector, working with athletes, working with teams, trying to help them get stronger, get fitter, and more resilient to injury. And Volt started actually as a little side project, as I imagine many of these little tech companies do. My roommate at the time was an IT consultant. I was working off of some pretty archaic and clunky spreadsheets. And the Genesis, the earliest version of Volt that we can remember back to, is me trying to sort out a better spreadsheet. My roommate being pretty good with spreadsheets, him sitting down and telling me I was doing all of this as inefficiently. And then we started working on building some smarter, more automated processes, right? And that was really the genesis of where we have ended up today. And what we discovered as part of that process of trying to work on just automating some of the things that I was doing with my athletes and with my teams at the time is we discovered that there was a really big gap in the sport and fitness industry. It's a lot harder for athletes to get access to high quality training when they're not at an elite level. And so I was working with a lot of athletes who had families who were wealthy enough to pay for private training, or were lucky enough to go to a school where they got access to really high quality coaching, sport performance coaching. And if you didn't end up as one of those two categories, you generally didn't know what to do in order to be higher performing and fitter and more resilient to injury. And so when we first started working on Volt, the idea was to come up with a software solution that could create new access for coaches and for administrators and for athletes to high quality training guidance and instruction. And ultimately that has evolved over the years as the technology has evolved, as we've built out new innovations. We now have a pretty robust AI capability that enables the system to adapt the training protocols to the athlete in real time as they're training, which is pretty cool. It's all delivered on the mobile device or through a tablet. And that digital interface is powerful because it enables us to create a feedback loop where we can take the information back from the athlete as they do their training. We can do this at really large scales. We can do this for hundreds of thousands, millions of athletes, and make adjustments and adaptations in the training programs so that each athlete is getting a particular amount of stress and strain in a particular way on their body at any given time, giving them time to recover from that stress and strain. And that's what ends up improving their physical capacity and capabilities. And we're able to scale that out across many tens of thousands of different sports teams, military groups, fire departments, and even corporate entities who have groups of people who they want to improve their physical conditioning and capabilities. And Volt's able to unlock that for anyone, anywhere in the world.
Yeah, that's amazing. We talked before we started recording about um I have a wife who is very much involved in the soccer world and have daughters that play. And so this is something, when I look at it, resonates with me as a father. But I'm curious to know from you, why did you choose this segment, this problem space to go into when you decided to start this company? And how did you decide that this had legs?
Well, the problem space, I mean, that was just natural for me. I was working in the problem space already. I was solving the problem in a very small scale, right? So I was doing a lot of things that didn't scale. I was a human. First of all, humans don't scale. So I was showing up somewhere. I had an X amount of time that I could spend with any given athlete. I would do small group training. The parents would pay a lot of money for that small group training. That was a high impact on a small number of people, low volume. What we wanted to build was something that could impact at large scale. And so the problem area for me was obvious that the access wasn't there, right? If you didn't have a high quality performance training coach around you,
Mhm.
you didn't know what to do to get better at your sport and to stay healthier. So that was the first problem we wanted to solve. Simply the what do I do here? I have access to a gym or a weight room. I just don't know what to do to get better. And I have that drive. So we wanted to fill that gap, that instruction, that guidance gap. When we started working on it, the market sort of found us in certain ways. We initially thought that football coaches were going to love this because football coaches love working out, they love lifting, just traditionally in the sport culture. But football coaches looked at what we were able to provide, at least back when we were getting started, and it wasn't that exciting for them. They already felt like they had a lot of the knowledge and guidance to provide to their athletes. Where we found a ton of success was in soccer, in tennis, in volleyball, in swimming, in baseball and softball, in sports where you don't have as much cultural understanding or belief in your own ability to guide your athletes from a physical training perspective. And that's where Volt was able to fill in a lot of the gaps. So the market really found us in that particular way. And as we started down this path and started building out software, this was back when fitness apps were not particularly common. In fact, if you went to the fitness app category, if that even existed, it was probably health category in the App Store at the time. This is back in 2011, 12, 13. You had MyFitnessPal, you had Map My Fitness, you had a couple big acquisitions in the space from Under Armour, but those were very much tracking technologies at their core.
Yeah.
So nutrition tracking or you could go for a run or a bike ride and it would track via GPS and accelerometers where you went and it would map it, right?
Yeah.
And that stuff was useful and lots of people would sign up and they had big exits. But that's a lot of what people thought of when they thought of the fitness app space at that time. What we wanted to do was deliver something that was heavily expertise and guidance oriented so that rather than just track what you did, we wanted to actually tell you what to do and figure out a way to scale that guidance to accommodate for equipment that each user would have available, time, their individual capabilities, their experience in terms of being part of a serious training program, and then create essentially an individual, Joel's version of this training plan where you are today to where you want to be and be able to adapt that along the way. So the way that we describe it today is a little bit like almost like a Google Maps style technology, where you don't go to Google Maps to track where you're driving. You go to Google Maps to tell you where to go. You're trying to get somewhere specific. You're not just trying to drive around. And that's really what Volt's designed to be. In today's world of app-based fitness technology, there is a lot more guidance available and there's a lot more sort of generalized guidance. So you can go to the App Store, download many apps, tens of thousands of apps that will tell you to do certain workouts. You can do yoga, you can do, 7-minute abs, you can do push-ups, and it'll track and measure what you've done. It'll give you some basic guidance. But Volt's designed to deliver a level of expertise inside of a technology package that delivers that expertise and adapts it to what you need given where you actually are. So to go back to the Google Maps analogy, if you're a 14-year-old soccer player who's never touched a weight before in their life, you're going to need a different version of a soccer training program than somebody who's 18, a few years older, who's been training for 3 or 4 years and has a good foundational level of capability. And then as you're going through your training program, not only do you need to start at a different place, but everyone adapts differently to training as they go through it. The basics of the way the human body works is that you're going to break down the muscles, you're going to strain and stress the joints, and then your body is going to adapt to that requirement because you're basically each day that you put stress and strain on your body, assuming it's intentional, and actually whether it's intentional or not, your body is going to react the same way. You're going to end up going to bed that night, waking up the next morning, and what you've taught your body is that, hey, we're going to be asking more of you. This is the sort of thing you're going to need to do. And so your body adapts to whatever you've asked it to do. and it'll adapt any direction you throw it. So if you lay down on the couch all day, your body is going to stiffen up. So it's like, well, all right, this is what we're going to do now. We're laying on the couch. If you go for a really long run, your body is going to start to work on adapting to the demands that you're placing on it and saying, okay, well, I guess we need to be able to run longer distances. That's our thing, right? So you do that more often, you build that on top of previous workouts. And what you end up with is a physical training program that builds off of the training that's previously been done, has a nice progressive focused approach to taking you to your destination. In this case, a sport performance destination, if we're thinking soccer, but this could be an occupational destination when it comes to being physically strong and fit and resilient to injury because you're a firefighter or a law enforcement officer or a military personnel. And either way, you're working towards, that end, but it's never a straight line, or it's not typically a straight line. So the real sort of interesting and I think exciting part of the technology for me is not only does it take into account where you are today and where you're trying to go, but also if you take a wrong turn or you're going slower because you hit traffic, if we're talking our Google Maps analogy,
Yeah.
it'll adjust, right? It'll make a new route to get you where you need to go. And Volt does the same thing from a physical development perspective. If you're able to move faster in the training program, if you're progressing at a faster rate than expected, the system will catch up to you and will progress you at that speed. Same thing if you need to pull back. If you got sick and you missed a week of training and you show back up, the system will adapt to you and your needs. And that's really for me with my background in human performance training, that's the big difference between Volt and the rest of the sort of fitness app landscape and what's generally available. The problem area isn't that it's hard to give instruction to people. That's actually really easy. I could send out a newsletter. I could tweet a workout. I could put a workout on YouTube or on Instagram. There's unlimited essentially ways that you can get just basic instruction out to people on a huge scale for free. But what is hard and what is the problem area that we work every day to solve is how do you deliver highly precise and appropriate and safe and effective instruction? And how does that guidance adapt and change based off of real life parameters? That's really the problem space that we're looking to solve.
That's great. So when you're building a new product and growing a company, there's kind of like two sides that you want to keep in check. And one is the adoption, right? You want people to adopt the product, adopt the platform. The other one is the continual usage. You want people coming back and using it again and again. How did you, as you're launching this thing and as you're even managing it to now, how are you making sure that those two things are healthy and heading in the direction you want to go?
Yeah, the retention side is critical for any subscription-based, membership-based business, right? So our model is pretty simple. We have two sides of our world. One side is just direct to consumer. Anyone can download the app, they can sign up for a subscription, and then they can cancel whenever they want. Hopefully never, but that's an option for them. And it's important to us that we make it easy for people to cancel. That's just philosophically something that I believe is important. And then we also have a big part of our business that is B2B. And so we're delivering training to a customer that is an entity, an organization. Typically it's a school or it's a club, a sports club, or it's a business entity, a fire department, a military customer, those types. And so those are really two different puzzles. When you're in the consumer space, the acquisition and the retention looks really different than the acquisition and the retention in the B2B space. So in consumer, we have to stand out from the crowd, right? We need Volt to be obviously different and better and a better fit for a certain type of user. So we really want people to self-select. We want users to self-select into the Volt family. If you just want a workout that gets you sweaty, Volt's probably not the best thing for you. If you are training for a marathon and you have a good running program and you want a good 2-day a week, strength and power supplemental training, Volt's going to be really good for you. There's ways that we sort of help people self-select into our ecosystem. Once they're in, if you do the training, you stick with the training. And that's pretty consistent, and we find we're very confident with that. Typically, that's because you've already self-selected in and you are already self-motivated. You have a reason for doing this, either your job or your sport or whatever it is. And so you don't need a lot of extra motivation. Volt is not the friendliest fitness app when it comes to rewarding workouts. We have a little bit of animation, not a ton of confetti. There's a lot of applications that are very focused on saying, hey, you did a great job because you did this workout, right?
Yeah.
And that's, we do a little bit of that, but ultimately we rely on our users to be pretty self-motivated, pretty intrinsically motivated, much more than a lot of the other app communities, which is one of the reasons why the folks who get involved with Volt and are willing to pay a subscription where there are many free apps that they can get workout advice from, generally will stick with it because they will be seeing the results that they are targeting and that they're going for, right? In the B2B side, there are many layers of users and customers that need to be satisfied, a lot of stakeholders. So say we're working with a college, the whole athletic department is going to be training on Volt. Well, typically there's an athletic director who's going to be the big boss who has to approve the purchase and potentially is even the one making the purchase decision, but at very minimum has to approve it. There's typically somebody responsible for performance training or strength and conditioning at the school. That could be a director of strength and conditioning, or it could be an assistant coach who has a sport coach who has that as a part of their job. Then you have as many head coaches as there are sports and assistant coaches as there are head coaches, plus more. And you very quickly realize that there are dozens and dozens of people who probably all have their own opinions about what good workouts look like. They probably were all athletes at one point in their lives. Now they're coaches. They have some expertise. And so you really want to keep everyone happy in some way, but that's nearly impossible, especially in the world of athletics. Even if you get all, say, so there's 20 sports at a school, you get them all together, all the head coaches coming together in a room, and you say, hey, we're going to switch to Adidas. That's our new apparel provider. Well, I don't know, 10 people, 10 coaches might think that's cool. 5 might hate it. 5 might be totally ambivalent. You're never going to get all 20 people raising their hand and saying, yay, we love this decision, right?
Yep.
You can't really get 20 head coaches to agree on anything. And so something like this, where you're bringing in a training system that is the school's resource that's available to all the coaches, we do a lot of work to help coaches invest and buy in to why the training is valuable, why the system and the platform enables a higher level of performance and enables their athletes to stay healthier as they're going through the training for their sport and the performance of their sport. And so that's a long process. And so what we do is we really invest heavily in success resources. We onboard each of our accounts with a fairly significant white glove approach. We have strength and conditioning personnel on our staff who work as consultants for our customers to enable them to get better access to the expertise that we can bring to the table. And then we listen to our customers and we ask for feedback. And so we try to get ahead of any circumstance in which the implementation it hasn't gone well, or there's a potential for an account to churn. And so our raw retention numbers are good. Our the way that we look at expansion within the opportunity of retention is somewhat sophisticated. We're always trying to bring more value to our users as best we can. And the challenge on the B2B side is you have all of these layers of stakeholders down to the athletes themselves who have no choice in what they do. They are going to do what their coaches tell them, but they still need to enjoy the experience and feel like they're seeing the benefits. You've got the athletes, you've got the coaches, you've got the administrators, and the rest of the support staff. And so it can get pretty complex and challenging, and it's a very different puzzle than it is on the direct to consumer side.
So I have a question for you, because you have the athletic side, which makes intuitive sense that, oh yeah, of course you would do this on the athletic side. The other side, which you mentioned just briefly, is the police officers, the firefighters, the corporate. So I'm curious, what made you decide to branch into that other segment, and what were some of the challenges that you had in trying to develop that market?
Yeah, the sport performance market is very much, that segment is very much our legacy segment. We've been operating in sport and schools and clubs and pro teams, like that sector for a long time. We moved into military and fire and law enforcement. That segment generally is called the tactical training segment, and then also over into more of what you think of as general fitness and kind of gym membership and personal training. And that all happened pretty naturally. We looked at what was being provided to your standard military personnel from a training guidance perspective, and it was not very high quality guidance. We see the fire departments, police departments, and just did some exploration in that market. Asked around, what are you currently providing to your personnel, and is there room for something better? Found there was opportunity there. We figured the product that we were able to deliver could be exactly the same, and the content really was the difference. And so the system is very similar in whether you're training for soccer or you're training for firefighting. You're still leveraging the Volt platform, but the content and what you're being asked to do is very different depending on your outcomes that you're working towards, which is really kind of the way all training is. There are all these different modalities that you can bring to the table at any given time, and there's different energy systems you're looking to develop, and there's different capabilities, and there's different types of muscle fibers, and there's different ways of moving, and depending on what you're trying to get out of that training, you just reorganize a lot of those different components to compile a training plan that is appropriate to each person given that outcome that they're working towards. And so we were able to do that at mass scale and automatically. So it doesn't really matter what the thing is that the member, the Volt family member is training for, that the user is training for. We can help steer them and guide them towards that. And so that was really the important idea that gave us confidence to be able to branch into some of those tactical training sectors. And then you look at the corporate setting, you look at gyms, you've got personal trainers who are trying to deliver better services to their clients. There's personal training software, but that's very limited because it can't open up scale. It relies very heavily on the personal trainer to actually interact and engage with the system in order for changes to be made. And so Volt in that space can create continuity and consistency among the trainers. So a couple of the clients that we work with are big organizations that handle gym management and personal training services across hundreds of different corporate clients. And so one of the challenges they have is, depending on where you are located, if you're going to sign up for the personal training services, you're going to be assigned a personal trainer. Hopefully that person is good. They do their best to train those people, and those people do their best. But without an underlying methodology that is consistent and provides some quality assurance, you can really get any sort of experience when it comes to working with a trainer. And that's not ideal. You want, if you're the brand, if you're that's organizing all of these training services, you're going to want that experience to be really consistent, no matter who you end up working with. And so what Volt ends up doing for these types of customers is providing a personal training experience that can be relatively consistent from trainer to trainer, because the underlying system of training is consistent and the methodology that's been built out is consistent. And so with rapid turnover, which is one of the problems in the personal training space, instead of starting new every time you have a brand new trainer showing up, you can actually switch people out if necessary and have a new trainer working off of a consistent training program, which is going to be much better for the client overall. So a lot of different use cases that the Volt platform unlocks, but really what's most consistent across all these market segments is really just the idea that each person is training for something unique to them. They're starting from some place that's unique to them. Their journey to get from A to B is going to be unique to them. And so the system is designed to adapt around them as the user. And that's a valuable proposition in sport, in tactical, and also in the more generalized, corporate fitness space as well.
So you mentioned the word adapt, and it sounds like in your time of building up Volt, you've had to adapt on a number of different occasions, both technologically and to the market. When you said you started with like spreadsheets to automation to AI, and that's sort of like your technical journey, and then you had, the starting with football and then realizing maybe soccer and tennis is more, a good place to spend your time, and then you go into like you said, the law enforcement, the firefighters. What were some of the challenges that you're making these changes and shifts to grow your company and extend your reach? What were some of the challenges that you faced, and how did you address them?
When we first built Volt, funny story, we built it to be fully automated. And we figured as soon as we pushed it live, we would sit back and let the money roll in. And that was the phrase we used. That was the joke. I mean, this is my
Yeah.
roommate and I, we're in our mid to late 20s. We're building something, we're pushing it live onto the internet, and then you sort of sit there for a second, you realize like, oh, somebody could buy this now, right? And
Right.
this is very exciting. And you wait and you find out that it's, unless you're Instagram and you get very lucky, you're probably not just going to magically take off. So then you
Yep.
start doing the really hard work, which is figuring out how to find the market, how to help the market find you.
Yeah.
So right away, we were already kind of in these mini pivots, trying to figure out what the best way to get Volt into the hands of people who would value it might look like. And as you're describing the journey, going from teams and sports teams in particular, into this tactical space with these into the consumer market, we have been moving as a company and adapting to what the market has provided for us as opportunity. Sometimes the market takes away opportunity as well and opens up new doors. And what is it? Closes a window and opens a door, maybe vice versa.
Yeah.
There's some useful analogy there. But the pandemic hits us, right? Like it hits everybody in
Mhm.
2020. And this is just one example of one of the really interesting challenges. We had been at that time about 70% of our revenue was coming from direct to consumer subscriptions. So people around the world downloading the app, signing up. There's something really beautiful about that model because it's relatively simple. You advertise in some way, you pay somebody, usually at this point, you're paying Facebook, Meta, to put your ads in front of Instagram users. And then Instagram users, tap the ad, they go to, your landing page or to your app, they download it, they start a free trial. You can do your best to track, the progress of that user from when they first saw your ad all the way through their first payment and through their maybe eventual churn, right? And so you can have this life cycle of a customer that you can track really closely. And we were doing that very effectively, very efficiently. We were scaling. We were sort of in this, hey, consumers really working. Volt has something unique here that is bringing value to people who are willing to pay for it and continuing to stay subscribed over time. Pandemic hits. All of a sudden, gyms are closed, sports are closed, events that you might train for are closed. Priorities of many of these organizations go from, hey, we're trying to bring better resources to our members to we're trying to stay alive at all costs. Budgets are in flux. Like everything is just thrown into upheaval, right? One of the things that happened to us as a company that was going through this is, yeah, we were a digital fitness technology company. So there's opportunity, sure, in a pandemic world, but also there is unlimited access to uh, getting sweaty instruction to how to get sweaty. You go online during the pandemic and everyone is like, hey, here's 30 minutes of, free yoga flow. Here's 30 minutes of whatever, right? It was just pervasive. Everything became free. And so I described that as the market essentially flattening, but in reality, it was more like a rug pull where there was a large segment of the market interested in paying for a premium um, training app like Volt. And those people went, from however many existed at the time. Pandemic hits, that goes to essentially zero because there is no reason to train a way that Volt would prescribe training. And there's certainly no reason to pay for it if you're stuck at home and all you have, all you have access to is your own body weight or a dumbbell. And all you really want to do is get sweaty because you're stressed out and you're freaked out and just want distraction, right?
Yep.
So we went through a few years where we really saw that direct to consumer part of our market change materially and permanently. And we've had to rethink and rework how we might want to continue to provide direct to consumer services. And so instead, during that time, we focused on our groups offering, our B2B offering. What could we bring to schools during this time? What could we bring to fire departments, military personnel, those sorts of things? And one of the things that we've decided to do, and this has been a progression and evolution over the course of the last few years, is really start to develop a broader and more comprehensive suite of resources for our users. So not only are we prescribing what they do for their physical training, but we've just made an acquisition of a mental health and well-being
Oh,
technology
nice.
company
Yeah.
that is designed to help support the overall well-being more holistically
Yeah.
of each of our users. And we believe that's a critical and important part of the whole
Yeah,
picture,
that's great.
physical and mental training, both essential. So the market gives you opportunities, takes others away.
Yep.
You, as you said, adapt. You kind of try to keep swimming. You try to keep your head above water. And for us, we've just tried to stay an ear to the ground as best we can, and just make what we feel like are the intuitive decisions, strategically, that make sense along the way to put the company in the best position to be successful.
No, that's great. And you mentioned this already with like mental health, but where do you see Volt going in the future? Where do you want it to go in the next 2, 3, 4 years?
Well, certainly for me, the mental health part of what we're doing is important, and it's a passion area for mine. For me, I went through my own mental health challenges over the last 5 or 6 years. I lost both of my parents to cancer in a short time frame that really threw me into a less stable mental space than I had been
Yeah.
in the previously in my life. And I remember back to when I was a competitive athlete and I was training, and how challenging that world is from a mental stress and strain perspective. You get injured, you get benched, you perform worse in practice or in a game than you had anticipated, or you perform really well and you win a big game. There's all these different challenges that will come about. And we really want to help support the whole athlete journey. We really want to help people have a better experience with training, a better experience with performance and competition, and then really develop a lifelong relationship with human performance and kind of physical excellence. And in order to do that, you really have to take care of the other components too. You have to recover, sleep, you have to eat better, and you have to really pay attention to your mental well-being. And so what we're able to do with our recent acquisition, which is called Zama, Zama enables us to treat a whole component of the athlete that was previously left untreated, which we're really excited about. I could see us adding nutrition tracking and guidance as a capability in the future, potentially sleep hygiene and other recovery parts. You could also, imagine a world where Volt is designed to be even more interactive with other systems in the space. So one of the things that I'd love to do, we haven't done yet, is much more robust integration with biometric tracking and other wearable technologies that can help our system bring more data into the system to make better decisions and to adapt the guidance. So everything for us is in service of the athlete. Even the resources we deliver to coaches ultimately are designed to eventually get to the athlete. And we really want coaches to be better equipped, athletes to be better equipped, to make better decisions, and to really, be able to get the most value out of their energy that they're putting into their training. And so, if we can support the holistic athlete with these resources, we're going to get better results out of the physical training, and that's ultimately what we're here to do.
Awesome. Well, Dan, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. It's been great learning about you and your journey as a business owner, and a lot of great information about your product. I look forward to watching you grow and see where you take Volt in the future.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. Really appreciate you having me on.